Okay then, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The topic of this morning's webinar is setting up permissions. As you might know by now, my name is Adam and I'm part of the 4PS account management team. And I'm joined here once again by James Sharp, who's one of our consultants. I'll hand you over to James in just a moment to take you through today's agenda. If you've been on our webinars before, you know how it works, but if not, we ask that you forward any questions onto me directly once the webinar is over. It's just a way that we can save time and make sure that we don't overrun. So I'll pop my contact details up on the screen at the end of the demo, so feel free to give me a call or drop me an email. As usual, we are recording this webinar, so it should be available to view on our website very soon. And all in all, we're looking for today's session to last around 15 minutes. So if you're all set, James, it's over to you.
Thank you, Adam. As Adam's mentioned, the topic of this webinar is permissions. So I wanted to go through the 3 ways that you can assign permissions to users. The first way that you can assign permissions to users is to just assign them the predefined permission sets. So out the box with Navision, Microsoft has got a load of predefined permission sets that you can just give to users. So it's really, really easy to do. They've got a description of what they do. You just give them to the user. Disadvantage really is it's not as flexible really because you've only got a certain amount of them, but it is the fastest way to give out permissions. Second way you can give out permissions is to build up the permission set from scratch. So what that basically means is you take all the permissions away from a user and you ask them to carry out their daily job. Every time they get an error message, you give them the permission that that error message requires. So it is the most time-consuming way to assign permissions, but it is the most secure and the most flexible because you're only giving that user access to what you want to give them access to. Whereas if you give a user one of the standard permission sets, you're giving them everything in that permission set. And then the last way that you can assign permissions is to use the permissions recorder. So this is very fast and very flexible. And what you essentially do is you press start on the recorder, you ask the user to do their job, and Navision will log the permissions that are being used in the background and then create a permission set out of those. And at the end, I just wanted to quickly show you user groups. So user groups is a way that you can group permission sets and then assign them in bulk. So in this video, I'm going to be using 2 users. I'm going to be using this user, which we're going to imagine is like an admin user, and then we're going to use my actual user, which we're going to lock down. So before we can assign permissions, users need to be set up as a user. And that's done in this table. So if we look in this table, we'll see a list of all the users, and these are the people that we can adjust the permissions of. So the first thing we need to do, if we want to be able to give a user permission, is add them to this list. So if we press new, and we go to here, then we can search for that user in our directory. So we've got someone who worked at the company called Mark, so we're going to add Mark's user. So we're going to search for them in the directory by clicking these dots. So we'll type his name in here, click locations, and we're going to look in the entire directory. And then we'll press check names, select the user, and press OK. So now we have a user for Mark. And as you can see at the bottom, we've got no permissions. What we can do is just give Mark super user, the super permission. And that is the highest level permission that we can give. Not just because it's a super user permission that has all permissions, but because we haven't selected a company against that permission. If we pick a company here against that permission, then that permission will only apply to that company. But if we don't select a company, then that permission applies to all companies. So the super user permission without a company assigned to it is the highest permission that we can give. But what's the opposite of that then? So the opposite of that is to have no permissions at all. That would be the bare minimum. So if we go to my user now and take the super user permission away and then try and open Navision, we'll see that we're actually completely locked out. We can't get onto the client at all. So there's actually a permission that you need as a bare minimum just to be able to get onto the client, and that's called basic. So all users, as a bare minimum, should have the basic permission. We press OK and try and open the client again with my user. We'll see that this time we can open the client. We've still got some errors because it's trying to render data on the role center, and we can see that we can't really see any information at all on here, but we can now open the client. So that's the bare minimum that a user should have. So back to our list then of the 3 ways that we can assign permissions then. The first way is to distribute the predefined Microsoft permission sets. So if we go to permission sets, we can see a list in here of all of the permission sets that there are. And we've got a name here, which gives you a bit of a description as to what they do. Edit fixed assets, fixed asset setup, general ledger setup, post item journals. There's quite a lot on here. So it's well worth having a look to see if there's a predefined permission set before you go and create one. So if we go back to my user now, which we've completely locked down, we've only given this user now enough permissions to actually open the system. Let's say we want to be able to open the changelog. If we search for changelog setup in here, we'll see that it actually doesn't populate at all because we've got so few permissions, we can't even see it in the search box when we look for it. So we're going to give this user access to the changelog setup by giving it some of the predefined permissions. So if we go back to our admin user now, and we search the permission search and search for changelog, we'll see that we've got 3 predefined permission sets here. We've got changelog delete to delete changelog entries. We've got changelog setup to set up the changelog, and we've got changelog view to view the changelog entries. So what I'm going to do is assign these predefined permission sets to this user. So if we go to the drop down here, we can see the list of all of them. So changelog delete, changelog setup, and changelog view. So now this user has the ability to open the client and also the ability to delete, setup, and view the changelog. They should, you don't need to restart the client. I'm just going to restart it anyway, but the permissions should just pull through. I'll just restart it anyway. Close those errors which are about rendering data on the role center, and now we'll search for the changelog. And we can see that the changelog setup and the changelog entries appear. And we can go to the setup, go to the tables. Even though we won't be able to do anything else on the client, we can come into here and edit this. The next way that you can assign permissions is to build a permission set from scratch. So to build a permission set from scratch, what you would do is you would tell a user to carry out the role that they want to do, carry out the process that they want to carry out, and every time they hit an error, you would assign them the permission that that error requires. So let's do an example. Firstly, we'll create the empty permission set. So let's say we want our user to be able to view the customer list, and that's it. We'll create a permission set called view customers. And if we click permissions, we'll see that this is a blank permission set at the moment. There's actually nothing in there. So I will assign this permission set to the user. So the user can open the client, view the changelog, and we've just given this blank permission set at the moment now with nothing in it. So we'll open the client again, try and open the customer list, and every time we get an error, saying that we're missing a permission, we'll add that permission to the permission set. So search for customers, and we'll see if we get any errors. And we have. So just quickly pop this into Paint, just to break it down for you really quickly. So it says you do not have the following permissions on table data, integration record, read. So there's three important parts of this error. Table data, integration record, read. So we need to add this permission to the permission set that we've assigned to the user to be able to get past this. So if we go to permission sets and view our permission set we created, view customers, go to permissions, and it said table data, integration record, read. So table data is the first option here in the object type dropdown. If we go to advanced, then we can search for integration record. And it didn't ask for insert, didn't ask for modify, didn't ask for delete, it just asked for read. Because we've put that permission in the permission set that the user's got, the user's now got that permission. So we'll close the client, reopen it, and try and search for customers again to open the customer list. And this time, we're not going to get that error. We're going to get another error. And what that means is we've got slightly further. So we search for customers. So we haven't got that error that we got before, integration record read. We've got a different one now saying table data, CRM integration record read. So it means we need to do the same again. We need to add another permission. And this is also a table data permission, and it's also a read permission, but it's on a different table. It's on CRM integration record instead of integration record. So I'll open the permission set again, table data, search for CRM integration record, and it's just read. We don't need insert, modify, delete. We can add them if we want, but we're doing this as secure as possible, as locked down as we can. So if I close that and reopen it, search for customers again. We'll see this time the customer list has loaded, so we can see the data. So we hit an error, which asked for a permission. We gave the user that permission. We then hit another error, which asked for a permission. We gave it that permission, and now we can view the list. So this is the data here. We have got another error here, which is asking for the customer ledger entry, and that information is for the customer statistics fact box. So this related table here, we have the option to give the user access to or not. So it's up to us if we want to allow the user to see this additional information in this fact box. And that's what's good about doing the permissions the way we have them, even though it took slightly longer and it's a bit more elaborate to keep stopping and adding the permissions and working through the errors. It gives you the ability to lock it down exactly how you want and say, well, we want to give the user access to this customer list, but we don't want to give the user access to this customer statistics fact box. And it allows you to break it down like that. So that is adding permissions via a permission set that you've created from scratch. So the last way that I wanted to show you is using the permissions recorder. So to use the permissions recorder, we just create a new permission set. Let's view customers. Rec, because we're going to record it, although it should be the same. And we're going to click permissions, And instead of manually adding permissions as lines to this list, all we're going to do is click Start. Now we've clicked Start, Navision is going to log all the things we do and keep a note of all the permissions that were needed to run that process or open that page or open that table. So if we minimize this and then go to the customer list again, the permissions that are needed to get to this table are being logged in the background. Because this uses a super user, we can see all this data here that we couldn't see when we built the permission set from scratch. So when we stop the recording, we're going to end up with far more permissions because it's going to add permissions that are needed to access the related tables. So it's much, much faster to do it with the recorder, especially if you're doing posting a sales order. If you want to give a user the ability to post a sales order, then they're going to need 20 permissions. So if you do it with the recorder, it's much faster than if you do it one by one. But it does give access to the related table. So that's the advantage of doing it the longer way, because you can have it more secure. So that's the three ways you can create permissions: either assign the standard permission sets, create a permission set from scratch, or use a recorder. And there's one last feature that I just wanted to show you, and that's user groups. And user groups are a way that you can group permission sets. So when we went to permission sets and we searched for changelog, there was 3 permission sets for the changelog. And that was changelog delete, changelog setup, changelog view. So what we'll do is we'll just create a user group for the changelog permissions. And to do that, I'll go to search for user groups and then click new. I'll call this changelog. All changelog permissions. And then we can assign permission sets to this user group. So changelog delete, changelog setup, and changelog view. And if we go to our user now, instead of assigning the permission sets individually, we can just assign the user group. So if we edit the user card, delete these permission sets, and add the user group instead, if you keep an eye on the bottom, user permission sets, when we add the user to that user group, it populates those permission sets. Delete the user group, disappears, add it again, then they appear. Also, when you do it like this, you can't delete the permission sets from the user unless you remove them from the user group. So I've tried to delete that changelog setup permission, but it says that we can't delete it because they're included in the changelog user group. So user groups are a way you could split up your permissions by department. You could make a sales order processor user group and then have multiple permission sets for that user group, just as a way to break it up. And instead of having one permission set called sales order processor, you could have a user group called sales order processor and then have individual permissions in that if you wanted to have it a bit more granular. And there's also a way to distribute them in bulk. If we go to user groups, and then go to user by user group, we can see that that user group that we just created, instead of going onto every user card and selecting it, we can just tick, 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 tick down here. So say the basic logon permission, if we created that as a user group, instead of assigning that to every individual user, we could just come to this screen where we can just add them in bulk. So standard permission sets, very easy to do, but there's not everything there. So it's not as flexible as the other ways. creating a permission set from scratch, quite time consuming, but definitely the most secure and definitely the most flexible, because you could give a user access to a list, but then not access to the fact box. And the permissions recorder, very fast and very flexible. So thank you, and I'll pass you back over to Adam.
Brilliant. Thanks, James. I hope you all found that interesting and useful. So if you do have any questions or would like to know more, please take a note of my contact details on the screen now. There we go. Also, be sure to check out our website for all of our previous webinars. We've updated the website with all of our 2018 webinars, so do go and take a look at that. So that's it for this year. Thank you to all of those who've attended our webinars in 2018. We've got lots more lined up for 2019, so do keep your eyes peeled for the next one. Once again, thank you for being with us this morning. Have a great Christmas, and we'll see you again in 2019. Thank you.